Yes, welcome everybody. Cannabis news with Joe Klare for April 18th, 2018. It is 420 week, the biggest week in the cannabis community. Of course, don't forget on our 420 show on Friday, we're going to be giving away 5 hats to YouTube subscribers. You have to be a YouTube subscriber to the Marijuana Times, and you have to comment on videos. The more videos you comment on, obviously, the better your chance of being seen and winning a hat. So go check that out. Check out our YouTube channel. And, of course, be listening and watching on 420 to the 420 show of Cannabis News to see if you are a winner. Of course, it's brought to you by Cannabis News and the Marijuana Times. Check out marijuanatimes.org for a bunch of great articles and videos, all these episodes. And if you would like to buy one of these hats, makecannabisgreatagain.com. Maybe you're one of those people who doesn't want to wait for a giveaway. Say, forget all that, Joe. Don't need a giveaway, although it would be nice, obviously, and nobody wants to turn down free stuff, but you want to just go and buy one and help support marijuana legalization. MakeCannabisGreatAgain.com. Today we're talking about recreational marijuana in Australia, legalization, whether or not that may still happen. Also, Lyft, the ride company, the what do you call them? Ride sharing? Is that the word? I don't know. You know what Lyft is? Lyft and Uber. This is Lyft. The other one's Uber. They're celebrating 420 as well. We tell you about that. Also, a new study shows marijuana's effects on adolescent brains. This is a huge issue when it comes to marijuana legalization. And in fact, it's the number one issue that marijuana legalization opponents and those who support prohibition point to, is the so-called cognitive deficiencies that marijuana smoking, especially at a young age, causes. There's a new study about that, a massive study. We'll talk about all of that coming up. But first, of course, tell you the Cannabis News is brought to you by naturesidecannabis.com. Site is spelled CIDE. Check out their line of organic, all-natural pesticides. I've done this commercial enough, you think it would just flow smoothly, but sometimes it doesn't. They're organic, all-natural pesticides. If you're a cannabis cultivator in a state where that is legal, there's a lot of pesticide regulations you have to follow. Natureside's products help you with that. Grow safe and poison-free. Don't put harmful chemicals on what you're growing. People are going to be ingesting that stuff, and you don't want them ingesting harmful pesticides, so you need naturesidecannabis.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. Go and check them out. This is the first story from marijuanatimes.org, written by yours truly. Is recreational marijuana legalization dead in Australia? Basically, the Green Party in Australia had this plan. They announced this plan earlier this week. They want to legalize recreational marijuana. Now, medical marijuana has been legal in Australia since 2016, and they're slowly rolling out that program. But the Green Party wants to legalize it for adult use. Adult use in Australia apparently being 18 and over. So they come up with this plan. They want to have a home growing of 6 plants. They want to have, for some odd reason, a government agency act as a middleman between marijuana growers and the shops that would sell the marijuana. So it would go through a government agency on its trip through the supply chain. And it was legalized, possession and all that for adults in Australia. And but the Minister of Health in Australia, whose name is where's his name right here? Is this right here? Hunt. Something Hunt. Oh man, where is it? I don't know. I don't think I put it in there. I think I screwed that up. That's the problem. The problem is I screwed up in writing the article, so I screwed up on the show. Hunt, whatever his name is, the Minister of Australia. Yes, before you say anything or comment, this is a news show. You have to bear with me. So, when you make the mistake in the article, it compounds the mistake in the show if you're reading your own article. So it's a double mistake on me in the middle of 420 week. Anyway, this dipweed says that his job is to protect the health of Australians, and this action by the Greens risks the health of Australians. He cited the much disproven gateway theory for marijuana as his reason for saying that the government of Australia wants nothing to do with this legalization plan. They think it's horrible. A lot of reefer madness thinking still going on in Australia. And as I point out in the article, hopefully I did that. Hopefully I heard that right later in the article. They're just starting this road. Medical marijuana was just legalized in 2016 in Australia. This is not a conversation they've been having for a long time on a serious level, the way we have in the United States and the way they are up in Canada. But the United States and Canada legalization will show politicians and activists in Australia how it can be done, the effects of it in what would considered mostly English-speaking developed world, which is Australia is part of. So it'd be very relatable and transferable as far as the effects of what happens in the United States and Canada. They can point to what happened in Australia and say, look, this is what will happen if we legalize marijuana. But again, it may be a while. It may be a long road in Australia because the government and what's-his-face Hunt, who's the Minister of Health in Australia. I don't care if I'm going to find out his name, and then whenever I do a story about him from now on, I'm going to call him what's-his-face Hunt. I just decided that. It'll be a thing. It'll be a thing I do on cannabis news. So anyway, that's what's going on in Australia. It could be a long road. I mean, if you're counting on cannabis legalization for adult use in Australia, keep fighting for it, but don't expect it anytime soon. This next story is from Tom Angel over at Forbes. Lyft celebrates 420 with discounts in legal marijuana states. That's right, you heard me correctly. Lyft wants to be a reliable and affordable partner for marijuana enthusiasts, the ride-sharing company said in an announcement. Yes, ride-sharing, I was correct about that. I've been redeemed. They said that's why during April 20th, we'll be offering up $4.20 off of your next ride. The discount applies to riders in select cities and states where marijuana has been legalized, including Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Portland. Basically, they're saying, if you want to go out on 420 and get totally blazed, don't get in your car, don't drive, call Lyft, get $4.20 off of your ride in places where it is legal. They're also teaming up with Super Troopers 2, which is a movie, which I have to admit, I cannot wait to see. I'm a huge fan of Super Troopers and the movie. I help promote a lot of the crowd funding. So got that one right too. I'm killing it today with the internet jargon. Crowdfunding campaign that they did to get get everything going, get the movie going, get enough money to do the movie. I promoted that a lot on my social media networks. But on 420, if you enter the code Lyft Troopers, that's all one word, in the promo section of the Lyft app, the usual car icons on the map transform into Super Trooper characters. Now, on the surface, that may seem pretty cheesy, but if you're on 420 and you're blazed up and you're using your Lyft app and you're getting a discount and you put in that code and you see the little little faces, the little Super Trooper faces moving around the map, you're going to think that's pretty cool. Mark my words, because it is pretty cool. But another, the larger part of this is what we talk about a lot on the show, which is the mainstreaming and normalization of cannabis. When big companies use 420 for marketing, like the way fast food companies and other companies do, that shows that they know that this is a huge consumer base. A huge percent of the population are regular users of cannabis, and they're going to be celebrating 420. And to target those users means that they know that there's a lot of them, and they know that this is a mainstream thing. There's not just, there's a bunch of crazy hippies and the fringe elements of society that use cannabis. People from all walks of life use cannabis, and these major companies who depend on volume, huge customer bases to make their businesses profitable, they recognize this, and they are catering to those demographics, which is a good thing. Last but not least, this story is from CNN.com. It's a very interesting story. As I said, we hear a lot about the cognitive defects and developmental problems of adolescents who use cannabis. This new study, as I said on CNN, marijuana's effects on young brains diminish 72 hours after use. That's according to new research. Now, this is a very interesting article. I'm sure other news outlets have covered this, but I don't know if they've covered it in the same way CNN does. CNN is basically bringing great news for marijuana users, and they do everything they can to couch it and frame it in terms that are not good for marijuana users, including extensive quoting from Kevin Sabet from Smart Approaches to Marijuana, or Smart Approaches for Marijuana. I don't know, it's a stupid name. It's a stupid group. Kevin Sabet is a stupid person. Continuing with this story. Listen to this first sentence. Marijuana is notorious for slowing certain cognitive functions such as learning, memory, and attention span. Maybe that's why they call it dope. That's the first sentence of a story that is positive for marijuana users. You bunch of stupid, slow, marijuana pot-smoking morons doing your dope, destroying your memory and your attention span and all that. Now, to be fair, we know the effects of cannabis. Short-term memory can be affected. And the way I was told this when I was a kid, the first actual science I was told about marijuana, not this crap that it causes lung cancer and brain damage and all this, is that the THC covers the brain cells, and that's where the effect comes from, and it slows slightly the communications between the neurons in your brain. And then if you don't smoke, that covering goes away, and everything goes back to normal. Obviously, there's some effects on short-term memory, attention span, depending on how much cannabis you use. We all know these are the effects. To say that, well, none of that happens is ridiculous. Continuing. Now, this is where he goes into the actual positive news. After his sentence, totally denigrating and insulting cannabis users, then he moves on to the actual news. And this guy, who's this guy? I don't know. It's not what's his face Hunt. Mark Lieber at CNN said, but new research in young people suggests that these cognitive effects, while significant, may not persist for very long, even among chronic users. The meta-analysis published Wednesday in the journal JAMA Psychiatry combines data from 69 previous studies that look at the effects of heavy cannabis use on cognitive functioning in adolescents and young adults. It found that those young people who identified as heavy marijuana users scored significantly lower than non-users in a variety of cognitive domains, such as learning, abstraction, speed of processing, delayed memory, inhibition, and attention. Inhibition is another thing. Obviously, marijuana lowers your inhibitions, not as much as alcohol, but it does have that effect. There have been a couple of meta-analyses done on adult samples, my bad, but this is going to be an episode for the record books. But this is the first one to be done specifically in adolescent and young adult samples, said Cobb Scott, assistant professor of psychiatry at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania and a lead author of the study. We looked at everything from learning and memory to different aspects of executive functioning, such as abstraction ability, Scott said. We basically showed that the largest effects, which was around a third of a standard deviation, was in the learning of new information and some aspects of executive functioning, memory, and speed of processing. But when the researchers separated the studies based on length of abstinence from marijuana use, the difference in cognitive functioning between marijuana users and non-users was no longer apparent after 72 hours of marijuana abstinence. That could be an indication, quote, that some of the effects found in previous studies may be due to the residual effects of cannabis or potentially from the withdrawal effects in heavy cannabis users. In other words, the worst things that can be said about cannabis and their effects, even those, are not permanent. Now that's fantastic news. There's nothing else you can say that about. You drink a bunch of alcohol, those effects are permanent. It will destroy your liver, it will destroy your brain cells. The effects of smoking cigarettes, tar in your lungs, increased risk of heart disease, and things of that nature. Permanent. These are not going away. You just stop for a few days. It does in cannabis. The very worst things they have to say about the effects of cannabis go away in 3 days. Now, of course, as I said, they quote Kevin Sabet extensively in this article because, well, you got to balance that little bit of good news and the first sentence, which, as I said, denigrated cannabis users. You got to balance that with 4 or 5 paragraphs from Kevin Sabet, who's just some guy who gets paid to support prohibition. He has no actual intensive perspective on this, other than he makes money making speeches telling people that they're for marijuana law reform, but they're really not, and they support decriminalization, but when actual decriminalization comes up on a ballot, they don't support it. He's into that. He's got a whole racket going. He said there have been important studies showing evidence of irreversible damage from marijuana use, and so there needs to be more research in this area, said Kevin Sabet. In other words, we need more research because these 69 studies just looked at and I'm commenting on, that's not good for me. That's not what I need. So there needs to be more research because there are permanent long-term effects, even though the study that I'm commenting on shows the exact opposite. He continues. Oh, by the way, he says he's an assistant adjunct professor at the Yale School of Medicine and president of the nonprofit Smart Approaches to Marijuana, who was not involved in the new study. Why would they be involved in the new study? What? Why? See, this article is garbage. This article, while having great news for marijuana users, is absolute garbage. And the guy who wrote it is garbage as well. I know. I know what you're saying, Joe. You seem a little, a little riled up today. I am. Sometimes you got to be that way. He continues, I hope they're right. No, you don't. You're a liar. Kevin Sabet, you are a liar. We want there to be little effect after 72 hours. Lie. But given the other studies that have very large sample sizes, they have been published over the past 5 years in prominent journals, I think we need to look into it more. In other words, he's saying he doesn't like this. He doesn't like these studies. We need more studies that agree with him. Scott, mentioned earlier, said, it's surprised, I think, all of us doing this analysis that the effects were not bigger than what we found, but I would say that the clinical significance of a quarter of a standard deviation is somewhat questionable. Now, Sabet, we'll wrap up this with a quote from Kevin Sabet. You've heard what this study says. Now, it's what he says. The study is pretty bad news for marijuana users. What? What? This study is horrible news for Kevin Sabet, and anything that's horrible news for Kevin Sabet is great news for marijuana users. He says, overall, I think this is consistent with the literature that marijuana use shows worse cognitive outcomes among users versus non-users. No, it doesn't. It shows that the cognitive problems that you harp on over and over and over again ad nauseum, actually, even if they do exist, they go away after 72 hours if you don't use. They're not permanent at all. And normally I don't really get into promoting Kevin Sabet. He's the last of a dying breed of reefer madness prohibitioners. I don't want to give any more attention to smart approaches to marijuana than is absolutely necessary. But this article, this garbage article, is full of Kevin Sabet. Lying. He says it's bad news for marijuana users. It absolutely is not. He says he hopes they're right about the effects going away. He does not hope that. He hopes the opposite of that. He is a liar, and he's just a big piece of garbage, as this article is. But anyway, CNN, fake news. You can't hide. You can't hide the good news for marijuana users in this article, no matter how much you try. Oh man, I'm a little on edge today, as you can probably tell throughout the entire episode. Sometimes I get to a point where oh God, no, I'm going to stop there because we're running along with this episode. So move on. I've said what I had to say. It's 420 week. I'm trying to be positive, but these people just trying to keep to throw garbage on cannabis and trying to thwart all of the information, all the research that's coming out about cannabis, all of it good about the effects of legalization, the medical effects of marijuana, all of that is great, and they hate it, and they're going to do what they can to denigrate it. But you know what? People like Kevin Sabet, in 10 years, nobody's going to know who that is. He's going to be that guy, you know. Do you remember the names of the guys besides Elliot Ness, for obvious reasons? Do you remember the names of the prohibitioners that went after alcohol in the 20s and 30s? No, because they're nobody. I don't think there will be any untouchables like show based on Kevin Sabet with his little axe chopping down marijuana plants. 10 years, nobody's going to know who Kevin Sabet is, and that's a good thing. Why won't they know? Because he will have lost. He's losing now. He will lose big time. Bigly. He's going to use bigly. I'm in Trump mode today. CNN fake news. Kevin Sabet is going to lose bigly. I have no idea. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. Continue enjoying your 420 week. As I said, the hats giveaway on Friday. Be a YouTube subscriber and comment, all of that stuff. Thank you to naturesideCannabis.com for being a proud sponsor of the show. Side is spelled CIDE. Check out their organic, all-natural pesticides at naturesideCannabis.com. This has been Cannabis News with Joe Klare for April 18th, 2018. We'll see you tomorrow on the show. Thanks, everybody.